Have you ever wondered why it seems to take, well, ages to get new homes built or crucial infrastructure projects off the ground here in California? Or, how those environmental regulations actually play into that?
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving deep into some really fascinating recent shifts in California law. Changes designed to streamline development while still, and this is key, protecting the environment. We're taking a close look at your sources for this deep dive, especially the 2025 CEQA statutes and guidelines from the California Association of Environmental Professionals. Good stuff there.
Right.
We've also pulled in key insights from the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG, and a recent Newsweek piece, California Housing to Change Under New Law. What to know?
Okay. So at the heart of all this is CEQA. That's the California Environmental Quality Act.
Right.
Think of it as California's foundational environmental review law. Its core purposes are pretty clear, actually. Inform decision makers and the public about potential environmental impacts. Identify ways to minimize those impacts and explore reasonable alternatives. The ultimate aim, as the guidelines put it, is to strike a balance.
Balance.
Yeah, considering economic, environmental, social factors, and crucially, that goal of providing a decent home and satisfying living environment for every Californian.
So for this deep dive, our mission is really to zoom in on those specific mechanisms within CEQA that are actually designed to help development happen. We're talking exemptions, streamlining,
Exactly.
the pathways through the process.
And we want to understand how recent legislative changes are impacting this delicate balance, especially for housing and critical infrastructure. It's kind of about cutting through some of that infamous California red tape, maybe.
You could frame it that way, yeah. Let's unpack it.
Okay, let's do it.
So how does it all kick off? Well, before any project can move forward, and the project could be anything, really.
Yeah.
A public agency building a road, or maybe a private development needing permits.
Right.
A lead agency has to make a key decision. They figure out if an environmental impact report, an EIR, is needed.
Okay.
Or maybe a simpler document like a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration will do the job.
What's the difference, really?
Well, an EIR is the big one.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember it's not meant to be perfect. It's an informational document.
Informational.
Yeah. The standard is adequacy, completeness, and a good faith effort at full disclosure. Basically, painting a clear, honest picture of what might happen.
Gotcha. And once that initial call is made, that's when the rules of the game kick in, right? Public review and all that?
Precisely. There are strict public review periods.
Yeah.
Communities, other agencies, they get to weigh in.
How long are we talking?
Typically, maybe 30 to 60 days for draft EIRs, a bit shorter, 20 to 30 days for negative declarations.
Okay.
And if it's a really big project, statewide significance, those periods can be even longer.
And the key is they have to use actual facts, right? Not just opinions.
Absolutely. Agencies must use substantial evidence, solid facts, reasonable assumptions, expert opinions. It has to be grounded. No guesswork allowed, theoretically.
And within this system, it's kind of like an orchestra. You've got different players with distinct roles.
Like who?
While the lead agency, often the city or county, they're the conductor, primary responsibility.
Okay.
Then you have responsible agencies, maybe a regional water board or air quality district. They have a say over specific parts of the project. And finally, trustee agencies, like Fish and Wildlife. They're like guardians for natural resources held in trust for everyone.
So it's layered. Multiple eyes on it.
Exactly. Designed for comprehensive oversight.
Okay, here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. For years, CEQA has faced, let's be honest, a lot of criticism.
Oh, definitely.
People point to it causing delays, driving up costs, basically arguing it stifles growth, especially housing.
That's been the narrative, yeah. The job killer label gets thrown around.
But something pretty significant seems to have happened in 2024. A real push to speed things up, especially for housing and infrastructure. New exemptions, streamlined processes. It feels like a shift.
It's an undeniable pivot. The 2024 legislative session brought some pretty profound changes. Take AB 1307, for example, passed in 2023, but really setting the stage.
What did that one do?
It brought critical clarification for housing and mixed-use projects. Imagine you're building homes and suddenly you're facing delays because of potential noise from the people who might eventually live there.
Wait, noise from the residents themselves?
Exactly. Their guests, whatever. AB 1307 basically said, nope, that's not a CEQA impact. Swept it off the table.
Wow.
And crucially, EIRs for these projects no longer need to study alternative locations for the project based on that kind of noise. That resolved some major lawsuits, like one involving UC Berkeley housing. Big relief for housing developers.
Okay, so that's one piece, and it sounds like housing specifically is getting a boost. AB 1413 in 2024.
Yeah, AB 1413 is, you could say, a bit of a game changer. It basically tells local agencies they can't just disapprove a housing project because they missed the deadline for finishing the environmental review or deciding on an exemption.
So it forces their hand a bit. Stops the foot dragging.
Pretty much. If the applicant gives notice, the clock is ticking. It's a clear push for quicker decisions on housing. Directly tackles bureaucratic delay.
Makes sense, given the housing crisis.
Yeah.
What else came out of the 2024?
Well, there's AB 2085. This created a new streamlined path, a statutory exemption, specifically for community clinics providing reproductive health services.
Interesting. Under what conditions?
If they meet certain objective planning standards, like being in the right zone office, retail, healthcare, not tearing down historic buildings or housing, and not likely to mess with tribal cultural resources.
So targeted help for essential services.
Exactly. Speeding up projects that meet a critical community need, provided they fit specific, clear criteria. And then for the really big stuff, there's AB 32265. This one set up a fast-track CEQA litigation process. So challenges in court get handled quicker.
For what kind of projects?
For what they're calling environmental leadership media campus projects in LA County. Think massive scale.
How massive?
We're talking at least $1 billion invested, high environmental standards like LE Gold, big cuts in driving, net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and creating at least 1,000 good-paying construction jobs. High-wage, skilled jobs after that, too.
So the state is basically saying, if you bring a huge green job-creating project, we'll help clear the legal hurdles faster.
That's the signal, yeah. A willingness to fast-track major projects that hit those high environmental and economic marks.
So pulling all this together, what does it actually mean for speeding up development across the state? It feels like more than just tinkering around the edges.
It absolutely is. It's a significant pivot. And beyond those specific new laws, California's also been expanding existing exemptions and streamlining, especially for housing and key infrastructure.
Like what?
Think about infill housing projects.
No.
Developments on already developed sites, inside cities, often under 8 acres, already got utilities.
Right, building within existing areas.
Exactly. Those can now often get reduced review. Quicker approvals. Yeah. Makes sense, right? Use existing land efficiently instead of sprawling out. Then you have transit priority projects.
Your train stations, bus hubs.
Yep. Residential or mixed use, mostly housing, minimum density, right near a major transit stop. The idea is clear. Encourage dense, transit-friendly living.
Less driving, more housing.
Exactly. Cuts car reliance, uses infrastructure smartly, helps with climate goals, and gets housing built faster. Win-win-win, ideally.
And you mentioned something really important for the housing crisis. Stopping agencies from just cutting down the number of units.
Yes. That's Section 20159.26. It basically says a public agency generally cannot reduce the number of proposed homes as a way to mitigate environmental impacts if there's another feasible way to do it.
So protect the housing supply during review.
That's the direct legislative push. Don't let environmental review shrink housing projects unnecessarily.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other examples?
Sure. University housing on university land often gets streamlined if it fits their long-range plans and hits environmental benchmarks. LE Platinum, managing transportation demand, and maybe on-site renewables.
Smart growth on campus.
Right. Enabling needed development without getting bogged down. And it's not just housing. Vital infrastructure is getting streamlined, too. Routine pipeline maintenance and repair. Exempted, usually if it doesn't significantly expand the pipe. Keeps the network running without constant reviews.
Good. What about emergencies, like after wildfires or floods?
Emergency projects to repair highways damaged by disasters. Fast-tracked, as long as it's just repair, not expansion, get things back online quickly.
Makes sense.
There are even exemptions for upgrading small community water systems in disadvantaged areas, clean water access without excessive hurdles, and even broadband deployment, laying fiber in existing rights-of-way. Streamlined. Better connectivity, faster.
Wow, okay. So it really paints a picture of a deliberate effort. Targeted pathways for development that meet specific needs or criteria. More predictability, maybe. A focus on getting things done.
That certainly seems to be the legislative intent. More certainty, less delay for preferred project types.
But, as we know, laws are one thing. how they actually play out, that often comes down to the courts, right?
Absolutely. Judicial oversight is the reality check. How are these rules being applied on the ground?
So what are the courts saying? Any recent examples?
Definitely. Take the Gooden v. County of Los Angeles case from late 2024. The city of LA tried to use a future condition of approval to fix an error they made in their initial assessment for a project using an exemption.
And the court said,
Nope. Can't use promises of future fixes to paper over fundamental mistakes made up front. Get it right the first time. It's about accountability.
okay, that's a clear message.
Then there was Santa Clarita Organization for Planning the Environment v. County of Los Angeles, also October 2024. The court ordered a whole new EIR for a subdivision,
Why? What was wrong?
a proposed off-site water well. They hadn't adequately analyzed its water draw, basically how much water it would take.
So even supporting infrastructure needs full scrutiny.
Exactly. Can't just assume it'll be fine. Need the analysis.
But challenges don't always succeed, right? Sometimes the reviews hold up.
Correct. Look at YOLO Land and Water Defense v. County of YOLO, late 2024 again. Challenges to an EIR for a big sand and gravel mine. Dismissed.
Why?
The courts found the EIR was adequate, did the job properly. It shows that if the environmental review is thorough and done right, it can withstand legal challenges.
So good work gets rewarded, essentially.
You could say that. And one more. Vichy Springs Resort v. City of Ukiah from earlier in 2024. This one's interesting. The court agreed the city hadn't complied with CEQA for a new shooting range,
Okay.
even though the range had already been built while the lawsuit was going on.
Whoa. So building it doesn't just make the problem go away.
Apparently not. It highlights that construction doesn't necessarily make a CEQA challenge moot if the proper procedures weren't followed in the first place. Process matters.
Fascinating. These cases really underline the ongoing importance of getting the review right.
They do, and they collectively reinforce the rule of reason that guides EIRs.
Rule of reason.
Yeah, means you don't have to study every single crazy alternative imaginable, just a reasonable range of alternatives, enough to allow informed decisions and actually reduce significant impacts. Practical, actionable review, not endless theory.
So we've kind of navigated this evolving CEQA landscape. It's clear California is trying to strike this crucial balance.
It really is a balancing act.
On one side, you've got this strong legislative push, streamlining, exemptions, especially for housing, for infrastructure, a real push to speed things up.
A definite focus on efficiency and removing perceived roadblocks.
But on the other side, those core principles, environmental review, public input, they're still fundamental. And the courts are there, making sure agencies follow the rules, spirit, and letter.
Absolutely. The foundation remains, but the pathways are being, let's say, selectively widened or paved for certain types of development.
Yeah. This deep dive, it really shows the conversation isn't just environment versus development anymore, is it?
Increasingly, no. It's more about environmental protection through smarter, more efficient development.
Interesting way to put it.
These 2024 actions, focusing on specific criteria for streamlining, exemptions, it feels like a strategic effort. Encourage growth that's economically viable and environmentally considered, finding that, sweet spot of feasible solutions.
Feasible meaning.
Taking everything into account, economic, environmental, legal, social, technological factors, the whole picture.
So for you, the listener, this means understanding this really complex legal framework that honestly shapes everything. Where homes get built, how cities manage stormwater, everything.
It's this dynamic tension, and California is actively trying to innovate within it, seeking practical answers to really tough problems.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to chew on, to mull over. Given these pretty significant shifts in CEQA, this focus on speed, these targeted exemptions, what might be the unintended consequences down the road?
That's the big question.
How could these changes maybe reshape California's communities, its ecosystems, in ways we haven't quite anticipated yet? And how can we, as informed citizens, keep advocating for outcomes that really do serve both progress and protection? Something to think about.